So, good morning, everyone. And everyone outside, please come inside. It's now 8:30 and we are ready to start. A very warm welcome to everyone on this very cold and snowy day. And especially warm welcome to our Nigerian delegation who has come all the way just to experience the best we have to offer of Norwegian climate. I hope you enjoy it. I do. I love the snow. So, my name is Anne Hoskal Haugen, and I'm your moderator for today. Before I introduce the Nigerian delegation, ANEEJ, and the panel debate speakers, I will give you what journalists call boring but important information. So we will be here until 10 o'clock this morning. The program is such that we will first you will listen to me, and then we will introduce David, who will be the keynote speaker for today. You will also get to see a video from Nigeria to explain the topic we will talk about more. Then, after David has been speaking for 30 minutes, we will have a panel discussion for about 30 minutes also. And then for the last 15 minutes, we open up for questions from all of you. And I really hope you use this opportunity to ask questions, especially since we have people from Nigeria here. You can use the opportunity. It's your only chance. The event is streamed and it will be recorded. So if you do ask questions at the end, make sure to wait for the microphone, because if not, the people watching from home or afterwards will not be able to hear your questions. So the people from Fremtiden i våre hender will facilitate the microphone. So that was the boring but important information. And yes, and also emergency exits, one behind you and one to the side, and the toilets are also, if you just follow through that door and straight ahead, there are toilets there as well. So, to the topic. This debate and the presentation you will soon see will try to shed some light on the situation in the Niger Delta. Nigeria is the second largest oil and gas producer in Africa and has been for a long time. It has a long history with oil extraction industry, and one of the main companies, Shell, has been there since the 1950s, or they have been there longer, but they started commercial industry in the 1950s. This has generated a lot of money, but also a lot of problems. And that is what we will talk more about today. But the specific background for this event are two letters. They are both sent from ANEEJ, the organization who is here today. And ANEEJ is an acronym for Africa Network for Environmental and Economic Justice. The first letter was sent to the pension fund in 2012. They demanded that the pension fund, which is owner in Shell, did use their ownership to do something about the environmental and ecological disaster that has become from the oil spills in the Niger Delta. After 10 or now 11 years after claiming they had done nothing, another letter was sent. The pension fund has been asked to join us here today, but they declined. But to be fair, ANEEJ will be meeting with them tomorrow. So we will talk more about what you hope to get out of that meeting afterwards. So the key speaker today is Reverend David Ogulor. He is the executive director of ANEEJ, an important organization in Nigeria, who has been there working since 1997. We will now get a presentation for about 30 minutes to explain the background for the whole ecological disaster and the oil and gas industry on the Niger Delta. So please come up to the stage, David Ogulur. The floor is yours. When you have 5 minutes left, I will do like this. So then you can try to round off. Okay, give him a great big hand.
Again, I want to especially thank our friends who has made this possible. The moderator have done a very good background introduction, so I won't waste my time any longer. But I just want to first thank my Norwegian friends, organizations, forums, and others who have helped to make this possible. It's quite a long journey. Me and my colleagues who have come all the way from Nigeria. Not just that, but for the past 1 month, they've been involved in ensuring that we are able to make this journey. They have invested time, invested resources. So I want to especially thank Sunrise, who have also provided the support for us to be able to make this journey. And particularly, I want to thank individuals who have also devoted their time, and our friend Larissa, who welcomed us to Nigeria and to Norway 2 days ago. Again, we were welcomed by the snow yesterday. We were trying to be discouraged, but we were even more encouraged by the snow. So again, I want to thank you all, and God bless you. Before I actually start, I'd like to, as a matter of introductions, to also introduce my colleague. We all came with 4 delegations, and we come from different parts of the Niger Delta. It's quite a very extensive part of the country where the oil is produced. And for the past 65 years, oil has been produced in this region. So we especially decided that individuals from different parts of that locations should join the delegations. From the first, we have Celestine Akpabaro, is the face of the Ogoni people. I'm sure that you're familiar with the Ogoni struggle. Ken Saro-Wiwa that was murdered. In the next few days, they will be celebrating their anniversary around the world. Celestine Akpabaro is there. We also have our friend, we call it the mother of the struggle. Ijo is also another tribe in the Niger Delta, Bridget Fo. She's also there. We also have one of the youth, Goodluck Macaulay, who is also there. So before I go into the detail of the presentation, I'd like to give them some few minutes to at least share their perspective, and so that you can have an insight how these oil politics has actually affected our people, and why we think it's now a time to link up with comrades like you to begin to put pressure on institutions that have made it impossible for us to achieve justice. So let me formally call our friend Celestine Akpabaro to come on, at least greet our friends.
Thank you. Good morning, comrades, and it is a pleasure meeting all of you. I want to stand on already established protocol because of time, to express appreciation to those who made it possible for us to be here. And we apologize for bringing snow to you yesterday. Because if we didn't come, there would be no snow. I am from Ogoni. Ogoni is an oppressed, suppressed, marginalized, environmentally devastated, and economically disempowered people in the oil-rich but very poor Niger Delta region of Nigeria. Oil was discovered in commercial quantity in 1958 by Shell. So after 3 decades of reckless oil exploitation, the Ogoni people took stock of their situation under the leadership of the late environmental rights defender, Ken Saro-Wiwa. Took stock of our situation and observed that in spite of the stupendous oil and gas wealth in Ogoni, the 2 national refineries, a seaport in our place, that we're getting poorer. Our people are predominantly fishermen and farmers. And an environment where there is a complete absence of government, it is proceeds, what you get from your farming and fishing business that you use in sending your children to school and taking care of their medical bills and other basic needs of man. And so when the land was no longer supporting harvest and fishermen could no longer fish, because everything about oil extraction is violent, starting from the blasting of the soil, the land, what we call seismic operation, to the lining of the pipeline, the transportation. Everything on the right of way of oil goes down. In fact, the oil companies and Nigerian government have a very criminal alliance. They are two sides of the same coin. They go to bed together. And these two have transferred power to the oil companies to call in the military at the slightest provocation. In fact, they have protection more than the citizens. And so, gas flaring, I don't know, how many of you have heard about gas flaring? The gases, okay, thank you. The gases that are flared in our environment, they do that in very close proximity to human habitation. So the gases flared, release soot, and when the soot falls, it falls in the form of acid rain. Everything it touches goes down, including the skin, including the water, everything. And we don't have pipe-borne drinking water. It's the stream river that we drink. So because of that, the government wasn't happy because oil is the heartbeat of the economy of Nigeria. And they felt that the Ogoni struggle was touching on their heartbeat, and we need to teach Ogoni people a bitter lesson so other people will be careful. And that was why they organized a kangaroo military tribunal that sentenced Kensarawa to death. They gave him and other people 30 days right of appeal. But just 10 days after the judgment, they were marched into the gallows and executed. Unfortunately, Nigerian government invited UNEP, United Nations, to do an environmental assessment of Ogoni. The report is what I call a death sentence. Maybe if you Google UNEP assessment report on Ogoni, you will see. For time's sake, I will just want to summarize to let you know that the situation in Ogoni today is worse than the days of Kensarawa because the pipelines are still there. The routine checks are not done. So every now and then there are sporadic explosions leading to fire outbreak, destroying farmlands and everything, people's home. There are sicknesses that are alien, disabled children, young girls at the age of 20 getting menopause, and several other terrible things. So we want you to support our struggle by adding your voice that your government stop supporting a killing machine like Shell and other oil companies. Because the money that they share here is blood money. People are dying there. People are hungry there. People cannot go to school there. I want to thank you because you will hear more from the leader of this delegation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You've heard from the hostess mouth. I'd like now invite Bridget to also give a few minutes solidarity.
Good morning, everyone. I'm wonderfully delighted to be with you this beautiful snowy morning. I've never seen snow all my life. So yesterday was a rude shock. In fact, at some point, I had to go back to the hotel. But the snow did not deter us. And for me, this struggle is very important. And yesterday was an epoch-making event because of what women, children, and young people suffer from the 65 years of oil exploration in the Niger Delta. Life expectancy for women in Nigeria used to be 80 years, but today it's between 35 and 40 years. Oil has brought us more pain than gain. Every day you hear of violent conflicts in the Niger Delta in oil-bearing community. Why? Because the oil nationals, multinationals, have seized power. They've started using the divide and rule game. Shall know what to do. You cannot be working in a community for 65 years. There are no hospitals. There are no schools. Not even cottage hospitals. Every day women die. Infant mortality is on the rise because there are no nurses or doctors. What we have are alternative bed attendants who can do only so much. Because of the violent crisis in the Niger Delta, most of the young men and the men have left the communities. Most of the communities have 65% of women and children. So women become automatically the breadwinners of their family. And most times, after violent crisis from oil revenue, most of the men lose their lives. What do these women do? They're either fishing or farming. My mom told me growing up, you could just come out of your house and hold a fishing net, a small fishing trap, and put it in the water, and you get the fish. But today in the Niger Delta, we depend on fish from places like Norway, frozen stockfish, because the women can no longer fish. The fishes have gone to the deep sea, and they don't have the trolleys. They don't have the big boats to do that. So there's hungry everywhere. And the oil revenue that comes to the community, the men grab it, the few leaders grab it, the women don't even know. When their oil spills, it's the women's fishing traps and nets that are destroyed. But when compensations are paid, they are paid to family heads, who are the men who are runaway husbands, who are in the cities. So nothing comes to the women. And the women are confused. This has led to a lot of health issues with women. You heard what Celestine say. Young girls get menopause at 20 because of the acid rain, bad drinking water, all kinds of sickness, different level of cancer. And this has led to a lot of issues. Infant mortality. And young men are tired of waiting. We keep hearing it's on the pipeline. It's on the pipeline. Every day Nigerian oil is stolen with vessels. Who are those conniving? They're insiders. So the young men say, oh, if we that own the oil cannot have access to it, at least let's take with drums. Since people we don't know are taking with vessels. And you don't steal what you have. It's yours. But women are worse off. Women and children are worse off. The flares are so close, but children walk naked, playing. They think it's light, especially in the night. They don't know that they are destroying their health for the next 25 years. And because of this, you have all kinds of health complications in oil-bearing communities. Communities that ought to be developed, but are undernourished, impoverished, and devastated. And women are asking, what can we do? What alternatives do we have? Are we going to relocate from our communities? We don't know any other community. What do we do? And every day, my organization, working with ANEEJ, we're thinking, what do we do for these women? What next? What next? What alternative source of livelihood can we give to these women? If you try to take microcredits, the interest rates are very high. The women have the dilemma of how do they pay back to begin to do other businesses. We've come to Norway as a delegation to say, this is the time. We truly and forever need the support, because every day women and children and young people die in the Niger Delta, especially from the area I come from, in the Bayelsa State. I'm sure some of you have seen the Bayelsa State report. And we are wondering, what is our government doing? They are conniving. And that report was launched in London, where the people who these issues affect are not available to validate those reports. It's a shame. But they say where there's a will, there's a way. We are willing to continue the struggle, and we believe that there must be a change. the lives of our women and our children must be saved. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Bridget. You know, it's always very interesting to hear the women. When you visit the Niger Delta, you listen to the women. You know, it's always very good to pick one hospital, one clinic, one road, and you see it in the beautiful magazines that Shell produced and put around the world. That's why this visit is very important. It's a beginning of a struggle, opportunity to at least challenge the establishment narratives. And we are ever grateful to our Norwegian friends for making this possible. We are not only just here, we are amplifying millions of voices who are unable to have this opportunity. This is a North-South solidarity. And we think this is what we need to change the world. Like I said to my friends when we arrived a few days ago, that this is a revolution in the making. This world, the level of inequality is not good. We're not getting the world right. A world where millions are dying, few are enjoying. That's not the world we look for. We look for a world where there is equity, where there is justice. And that is the beginning. And your time you are investing for this struggle is for a better world. And I'm happy that we're getting there. So we'd like to watch a video. We'll give you a background, at least give you an insight of where we're coming from.
I was born right here in this community, and I grew up to observe a whole lot of things that were happening in this community. Before oil, I knew exactly how we've been living here because I grew up here. And life was beautiful then.
My father is a fisherman. We just say, my mother, just put the banga in the fire. I'm coming back. We just run the backyard. Before you will see, we just come with fish.
This is the Niger Delta, a place rich with so much mangrove, swamps, oil, gas. It's a place that is so rich with resources that you will want to be jealous of. It's a place where every developer, every company wants to reside because they have life so easy. No wonder so many oil companies have come in to tap of the resources of the Niger Delta in Nigeria.
Sometimes I see many vehicles come with clean pan. We heard that some company are coming, they want to open company in our land. So everybody was happy, all the fathers were happy. They came, they will give, you will see quite man with shingon. Giving the children, we'll be happy, shingon. We'll be happy that good things are coming. That was our aspiration, that was our hope.
By 1993, Ogoni has contributed over $300 billion to the Nigerian state through its oil.
The prize should be bountiful, actually. It should be something of celebration to such communities. But the story I'm about to tell you is about the tragic price that communities have to pay in the Niger Delta for oil exploration by international oil companies. Welcome to the Niger Delta, a place that should be a place of riches, but has become a place of tragedy.
Because of the oil exploration, the crops that we are planting, I am a farmer, do not do well again as before. We don't have a very good harvest again as the olden days because they are exploiting those oils. You know, those things, God knows why He kept it on the soil like that.
A bunch of plantain. Look at what I plant. for 8 months now. See what he brought to me. See what he brought to me. Not even, it's not even up to for a human being to even eat.
Before, if you harvest cassava used to come out looking good. Some look like yams, big tubers of yam. But now, if you harvest cassava, sometimes you might not even get any fruit. You might not get any product.
Animals themselves, like before we this thing, we need to see again because of the gas. This oil spill don't kill our crops.
I'm sure I'm a fiber. The farmer will buy blue. I'm a fiber and black of fiber, black of wood and black of power. A commodity, a cook about my wearing, pound of fire.
Even the flaring of gas, they flare that gas in very close proximity to human habitation. And
the film,
when gas is flared that way, it's in the suit.
The film is about 9 minutes. Because of time, we're going to send the link around so that you can watch it in your own private time. And that will give you an insight where we are coming from. You know, picture don't lie, video don't lie. This is exactly the situation. So I'd like to just quickly run through the presentation so that we can also have an exchange with you. Because the struggle, like I said, has just started and we need your support. So, as you know, the oil fund is Shell's third largest investor. First, when my colleague mentioned Ken Saruiwa, he talks about we were targeting our government, thinking we have a responsible government. But like you know, democracy is failing in Africa. So you are here, you are lucky to have a government that at least democracies to a large extent works in Western Europe. But as a result of the situations, we have to look for innovative way to hold the institutions that are responsible for the trouble. But to let you know that your country plays an important role in Nigeria. Just to give you an insight, over 200 billion, your currency, which is about $20 billion, is invested in companies that are operating in Niger Delta. Total, ANEEJ, Chevron, ExxonMobil, Shell are the company that the oil fund invests in. So to let you know the importance of your country. And those atrocities you see in those videos, which means Norwegian fund plays a role. Next slide, please. Why focus on Norway's oil fund? And that's exactly the reason why we are interested. And we feel that the Norwegian fund is complicit in those atrocities, in the environmental injustice. And the responsibility and mandate ethics guideline. Parliament mandates require responsible management to achieve sustainable economic, environmental, and social development. The fund has a human rights and environmental standards, and the ethics councils to oversee those. But how far has it gone? Next slide, please. Investors also responsible for loss and damage payments. That was the key things that came out from the COP27. And we expect that with the Ethics Council resolution encouraging a responsible investment, and with the instruction after our letter to the Ethics Council, we were deeply involved in that struggle in 2012. And after 10 years, please, next slide, please. Next slide. Ethics Council findings. Norway's Ethics Council traveled to the Niger Delta to investigate Shell, and the Council's report submitted to the Ministry of Finance in 2013 validated all of the communities concerned. Some of those concerns you saw in the video, those evidence. The Council on Ethics find that Royal Dutch Shell PLC is responsible for serious environmental damage in the Niger Delta, but that there is exceptional uncertainty linked to future development. And the Council Ethics therefore recommend that Shell be put under observation for a period of up to 4 years. Next slide, please. But what was the response? After 10 years, we have this Responsible Investment Government Pension Fund. Beautiful magazine, beautiful report, and what the fund says, speed from pipeline operated by Shell decreased significantly in 2022. The cleanup of affected area is progressing, and the backlog has been significantly reduced. The company is working with Nigerian authority to clean up legacy pollution in Ogoni land, and is continuing to pay its share of the cleanup cost. Ogoni land is just less than 1% of the entire Niger Delta. So when Shell say they are cleaning Ogoni land, they are cleaning less than 1%. And you have heard from Ogoni representative. And even that 1%, the cleanup, you will see an evidence as we move on. Next slide, please. Caroline Dineth was a safety consultant of Shell, was an insider. She was in Nigeria handling these issues. What Shell whistleblower says, this is not from us. This is an insider. It's part of Shell. I have heard you blame sabotage from locals for these leaks and spills. How convenient transferring responsibility. You know, because the poor, we don't have the same platform that Shell and Norwegian Fund has. And that's why we are very grateful to you. This is the only platform that we have to be able to speak and represent our people. However, the result of the process safety culture survey that she carried out, I have conducted in your Shell Nigerian operation since 2012, I've told a different truth. This is an insider. Next slide, please. The pollution in the data isn't simply down to sabotage, because that's the narrative, that's the common narrative coming from the establishment, that is the locals, that it is the poor people that is causing the problem. It's caused by, please take note of this. Caroline said it is caused by the willful neglect of your own equipment and asset in pursuit of profit and huge profit. And that's what my brother Celestine said a while ago. Next slide, please. There are evidence. Beyond an insider whistleblowing, an investigation into the impact of multinational oil companies on Bayelsa. Read more on what we do. Nearly 14,000 Nigerians take Shell to court over devastation, impact, or pollution. People from Niger Delta area of Ogale and Bele seeking justice in London High Court. You will ask me, why do they not come to London Court to seek for justice? Shell personifies state capture. If you are familiar with the literature on state capture, all the regulatory system, court system, judicial system, parliamentary system has been compromised and captured by Shell. So the people have no hope. And that's why we are also here. The opportunity to use democracy to hold our government and Shell accountable is failed. In Niger Delta community, Tribune is a leading independent newspaper in Nigeria. Communities and oil spill, impoverishing residents, devastating environment, dislocating culture. These are independent evidence. Next slide, please. Impacts on people's health. I just want you to go through this. We're going to share this with you. In the last 4 years, Bayelsa Commission, just recently, commissioned studies of soil and water sample, as well as of local resident blood, found an alarming result. Thousands from hydrocarbon pollutions are present at often dangerous level in the soil, water, and air across Bayelsa. They have been absorbed into their human food chain, and they have ultimately found their way into their bloodstream and tissue of people living in affected community. High concentration of heavy metals were found in the food chain across testing sites, including chromium, cadmium, zinc, nickel, and lead. Every single groundwater sample exceeds the recommended maximum safe level of polyaromatic hydrocarbon, but at least 100 times, with one of the samples taken from Egberi, exceeding the WHO limit by over 1 million times. Next slide, please. Slow and limited cleanup. An independent analysis of official data relating to over 6,000 1,300 spill between 2010 and 2015 showed that remediation work was only undertaken in 4% of cases, and that in 90% of spill, there was no post-cleanup assessment. In Ogoni, physical remediation is still yet to begin at a scale. There is a general absence of any environmental restoration in Bayelsa and beyond. Bayelsa Commission report. And I'm sure that some of those reports, you also find them in the internet. Next slide, please. The reality about the cleanup. Ogoni land is 1% of the whole situation, and pollution in Niger Delta, like I said earlier on. Cleaning up should be part of taking care of the mess, not that they are giving aid to the community, what they currently show NDDC Community Development Project. The NDDC Development Project is a phantom project. Over 95% of those projects finds their ways into private pockets, with the elite being used to compromise the communities. It is not justification to keep the business going, keep investing, because every investment that is coming through oil fund that empowers Shell and other oil company undermines the people. Next slide, please. Even among those communities, development project, 87% are fake. And that's what Shell lay claim to. And that is what Shell contributes to. So you're contributing your money, you have a responsibility to hold whoever you are contributing your money to. But Shell suffice that as an evidence of supporting. Just for Bayelsa State, the commission report says that $12 billion US fund should be created for 12 years cleanup. Who is going to pay for this? Even though this debate is also within the UN system on the climate change debate about loss and damage fund, where will Nigerian government get this money? And that's why we're thinking that as Shell is moving from onshore to offshore, they must take responsibility. Not just Shell alone, but the investors, like the oil fund, must also be part of this responsibility. According to UNEP Environmental Assessment Report, it will take 30 years after the cleanup to restore the mangrove. The mangrove is the life of the people. It's the source of livelihood for the people. When you destroy the mangrove, you destroy the life of the people. Biodiversity is life. It's the source of the life of the people. When you talk about technology, that's the technology of the people, because through the mangrove, we get our medicine. You have resources to go to the pharmacies, but the poor in Ogoni, the poor in Warri, the poor in Urobo, the poor in Ijo don't have that kind of resources. But God has given us the mangrove as our source of livelihood. But what has happened is that your oil fund with Shell have undermined our source of livelihood, our source of medicine. Next slide, please. The People's AGM. How? We will not lament. We have stopped lamentation. We have alternative. We are responding. We launched the People's AGM 2 years ago. And in the People's AGM, we bring the peoples together, mobilizing, raising awareness, and challenging the narrative, the establishment narrative. Investors should stop lending moral and financial support to Shell and other multinational oil companies, and should vote against Shell energy transition strategy at the 24th. That was some of the moves that came out from the first AGM. We call on investors to immediately embark on a fact-finding mission. And what we are saying, that they must come, so that it doesn't look as if it's what we are just saying. They should independently verify and validate whether what we are saying is true. Next slide, please. The People's AGM. We are on the street. We are also putting pressure on our government. We're also holding our government accountable. Next slide, please. Second People's AGM, the same message. We're re-emphasizing the message. We are holding our government accountable as well. We are focusing, empowering the people. We can no longer lament. We want to make sure that there is justice. Next slide, please. Changes is possible. The Church of England, and with our action, we have held the Church of England, also an investor in Shell. And after our most protests, Shell and the Church of England has pulled out of Shell. That's exactly the same message we have brought to Oslo. We want the Norwegian oil fund to also follow the footsteps of the Church of England. Next slide, please. Linking with Norwegians to make an impact. We can't do it alone. We work with colleagues in England. Sunrise supported us. And that's why we also brought the message here. I want to thank our comrades and friends. And that what was possible with Church of England can also be possible with the oil fund in Norway. Next slide, please. The oil fund, Minister of Finance and others were told issues 10 years ago After 10 years of deceit, at least we have come to the knowledge that do they still want us to go through another 10 years before the Norwegian people will take decision? And as we're talking, people are dying. As we're talking, women are dying, children are dying. Things are going bad. Nigerians is not in the pathway to making sure that they achieve the Paris Agreement agreement on climate change. Some more fast loans aren't likely to be enough to make them act now. It takes a pressure, action from many citizen groups in Nigeria and in Norway. Acting together, we can make a change. Next slide. Thank you, and God bless. So that's my message from my colleagues. Whatever you hear we are saying is not our own message, it's the message of the people. We're only giving voice to them. And we want to thank you. We cannot appreciate you enough. This is a struggle. It's not just for the Niger Delta people. It's for justice for the world. We have responsibility to work together. I've got some colleagues, friends, been working with the Norwegians for the past 20 years. I recall, and I said this long time ago, when we started debate around restitutions of stolen assets and illicit financial flow. My friends are here. When I talk about it, those days when we were working on financing for development, people laugh at me. What are you talking about? But today, over $2 billion have been restituted back to Nigeria. Over 2 million people, poorest of the poor in Nigeria, have benefited from this restitution. So if that is possible in less than 20 years, this struggle is possible. We can work together and we can achieve it together. Justice forever, justice now. God bless you.
Thank you for that very powerful and convincing presentation, David. So it's now time for the panel debate. So please make yourself ready. You can come up on stage and I will introduce you. Let us just change the stage a little bit. I think you need this still. Yes, just come up on stage and I will present it.
Very close to you, because you'll expose my height.
Okay. So we will now discuss this topic further. And with us to do this, we have Julie Redje next to me here. She is the leader of the Debt Justice Norway, SLUG.
Yes, we are changing our name in English.
Yes. I love it so much. It means mordersnegle, for those of you who don't know but I really love the slug. But in English it sounds better. It's Debt Justice Norway. But you also have done your master thesis on Nigeria. So you have been in the Niger Delta. And just because I think it's so spot on, I will read the title. I think this is the title, right, for your master thesis?
Where does it start? Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Just check. Struggles for being heard in an oil-polluted environment, the civil society's experiences, opportunities, and strategies in the Niger Delta region of Nigeria. So it's spot on. And then Mr. David Ugulur, I already presented you, but still I will repeat myself. You are the executive director of ANEEJ.
Yes.
And then we have Lars Haltbrekken, which is elected to the parliament from the Socialist Left Party. But you also have a background in Naturvernforbundet, where you were the leader for quite a long time. 2005 until 2016, I think. Yeah. Before
Friends of the Earth in English.
Friends of the Earth, thank you. Before you were elected to Parliament. So you also know, been working with Nigeria when you were there. And then Camilla Hauland, you are Associate Professor at the University of Oslo. Also spent quite a lot of time in Nigeria. You specialized in trade unions and labor in Africa, Nigeria, and Norway. Political economy of oil and green and just transition. So I think we have a very qualified panel here today. So we have now seen you, David, present the reality the way you see it. The pictures are very convincing and very shocking. And I wanted to start by asking you, you have now sent 2 letters to the pension fund, the Council of Ethics. The last letter was sent this spring. What did you write in that letter?
Well, 2 things. We again re-emphasize the situation in the region. And then we also thought that the key message from the People's AGM in that letter...
But take a little bit closer.
Yeah, the key message is to invite the oil fund to visit Niger Delta. And the reason why we have extended this invitation is that when you look into the report produced, the Responsible Investors Report, it is not reflecting the reality on ground. And we have seen evidence coming from independent source confirming that the situation is getting worse. And rather than debating about it and to wait for another 10 years, which the Ministry of Finance insisted prior before now, we have decided that the best way to challenge this is for us to invite the oil fund. And if they visit, they will be able to see for themselves. And we have also gone further, that even before the oil fund will visit, we're also extending the invitation to the Norwegian citizens to come and see for themselves and see what the oil fund is doing. By implication, that will bring more pressure on the oil fund to visit. And when they visit, they will be able to come out with their independent report as well, just like other independent reports we have shown. And once they come with that report, because we live in a democracy in Norway, is that not so? And the truth must prevail. On the basis of this call, we think something will happen. That's the key core message. And then to also show that some of the issues that raised in the responsible report is not true. And that's what we have seen today.
Thank you. So a question to the rest of you. You can raise your hand if you feel called. Is there any reason to doubt the description of the reality as David Ugolur describes it?
No.
No. No.
No. Okay, so we agree on the reality, the description on the reality. But it seems to me that the pension fund does not quite agree on this reality, because if they did, you would imagine that they could not continue their investment, because there is, we have ethical rules saying that the pension fund cannot invest in, for example, tobacco, cannabis, weapons, but also not in companies who repeatedly violate human rights. How can this be true at the same time as we watch this? Please elaborate. Lars. Oh, Camilla, you're first.
I can start. I think the quote that David showed kind of sums up what they say. They say that Shell is clearly responsible for the environmental impact, and they are implied also in human rights violations by extension. That's clear. What they doubt or is open about is that maybe through active engagement they can improve. So they say that they detect some kind of ability and willingness to do something about it and improve the situation. That's what they say in the report. I read the report in 2013 and I was thinking, what will it take to get out in terms of environment if this is not enough? But I think the Ethics Council thinks, how can we best do something about it? Is it through Shell or is it by divesting? Because we do know that there are real challenges in just divesting and leaving responsibility. And the Bielsa report that David referred to has one of the recommendations is that making sure that the international oil companies that, by the way, are already moving slowly out of the Niger Delta.
We'll talk more about that later.
But I think that is important, and I think that is the dilemma. How do we, through the fund, make sure that there's a clean-up and responsibility before divesting.
But then they
So-
seem satisfied
and-
with the cleanup then.
And that's the other thing, because they haven't been there, and we've seen this all the time. And it is very.
They haven't been there. Never.
No, they haven't been there in the last 10 years.
Uh-huh.
They didn't have a delegation. So the quest now is to go back and see for yourself,
That nothing
which
has
is
happened.
quite a simple
Yeah.
asking. I think I don't know how it's possible to say no, because there are doubts. And if you look at the court cases in Holland and the UK and the new reports in Bielsa, there are so much doubt that Shell is right, that even if they kind of believe Shell, they should at least listen to all the other evidence that's coming out of the Niger Delta.
So just to make it clear,
yes.
the pension fund is not really doubting that there's an ecological disaster.
No.
No. But Shell...
And they're not even doubting Shell's responsibility.
But what is Shell saying about what we just saw here? Do they acknowledge this?
Generally not. They have been acknowledging that some of the spillages may be caused by lack of maintenance of their own infrastructure. But the fund adds to it that they should also be responsible for secure pipelines and avoiding the bunkering system. And I think maybe we should add a few words, because the Shell tends to blame anyone else. They blame the government as a co-owner of Shell. They have high investors and a joint venture system, and they blame bunkering, different kinds of stealing of oil, which does cause a lot of oil spillages, and environmental organizations will not deny that. It's a question of who's blaming who on what and how much it is. So there's no doubt Shell is responsible. They're arguing about how much they will be responsible for. And generally, the blame of Shell is underestimated, and the blame on those stealing oil is overestimated,
Okay.
I think.
So you listed two ways of trying to change the situation. Pulling out or active ownership. Lars Haltbrekken. The Socialist Left Party here in Norway is not too eager on the oil production anywhere at any time at all. But here in Nigeria, it's a special case because the ecological disaster is so vast. But what would you say? What are the options of the pension fund? Only these two? And what should they choose?
Yes, I think it's these two, and in my opinion, they should choose to divest, because that sends the strongest signal to Shell and others like Shell that one of the largest investment funds in the world do not accept these kind of environmental disasters like we have in the Niger Delta. And this has been going on for a long time. The first time when I got involved in the environmental disasters in the Niger Delta, I believe it was in 1995, when I was the chair of Young Friends of the Earth in Norway. After the things that happened then. And then we had the state-owned Norwegian oil company, today called Equinor, then called Statoil. They had invested in Nigeria and was responsible for oil spill. But they withdraw from Nigeria after some years and after some heavy campaigning.
For that reason, or?
Well, they did not say it was for that reason, but I think that the massive campaign that we saw against Statoil in those years was the reason for pulling out. And I think that if the pension fund now declares that we will divest from Shell, that will send the heaviest signal.
But still, if they did not do that and they try to use their active ownership, what can they really do? They are one of the largest shareholders, but still only 3% something. So it's not, it's not 50%. What can they really do? I mean, they're using this as their argument, but what can they do?
Well,
Since David is saying they haven't really done anything during the past 10 years.
well, the first thing they could do is to go to Nigeria and see for themselves, and start reporting on what they see for themselves.
And you have invited them through this letter.
Exactly.
Okay.
And I might ask the Norwegian Minister of Finance if he could ask the pension fund to go down there and see for themselves.
Okay, anything else they could do?
I think that's the most important they could do.
But I mean, if they use active ownership as one of their main strategies, what does it imply? I mean, it has to mean something, not only the word.
Can I say that the recommendation was active ownership, but that's not the conclusion from the then Minister of Finance, I think it was Siv Jensen. It was observation, which is kind of a milder form for engagement. So I think it depends also on who's the Minister of Finance at any time.
And you think that the one today is more active than?
No, I don't. But I think a former Minister of Finance was more active back before that again.
One more question for Lars Haltbrekken before we move on to Julia. If you want them to pull out, why is that so hard? I mean, what would it really mean for us? Couldn't we just invest our money somewhere else?
Yes, we could. But if I should put on the glasses of the pension fund.
Yes, please.
I think that they would like to be seen as a reliable investor in the Western world, and by pulling out, they might send signals that they might not be that reliable. They might be sending a signal. This is their thoughts. I don't defend them, okay?
So reliable in ecological disaster.
Yes. No, reliable in an economical way, and not being pushed by environmental activists and organizations to withdraw. That might be in their head, their explanation. And I do not defend it.
Okay.
Just to make it clear.
Yes. We get that.
Did you?
Okay. Julia, you have kind of two hats on, since you both have some knowledge about this. You went there. When did you do your master's?
I was there in 2017, then working for Friends of the Earth, and also I wrote my master thesis afterwards. But I haven't touched upon Nigeria for 4 years, so but still,
you have been there
like
and seen
exactly
it.
the same situation.
Yeah, you have been there and seen it. And then also, as the head of Slug, you have the debt hat on.
Yes.
So can you explain the people in the audience, if we talk about the green transition, I know you are very concerned that the way the pension fund is using their money in the oil extraction industry, it kind of also prevents a country like Nigeria from green transition.
Yeah, of course. First of all, I think it's a really good idea to invite the pension fund to go to the Niger Delta, because my master thesis is sort of blocked from my head. But I cannot never forget sitting in the Niger Delta, having my hands in the soil that's still like full of oil. You will never forget visiting the Niger Delta. It's shocking. And the images we just saw briefly on the video, it's real, it's extreme. So first of all, I think absolutely they should go there. But also, of course, there is Nigeria as well, is a country with a high level of debt. They have $108 billion in debt. And the money they are spending on debt servicing is, for the budget of 2023, is 29%. 1/3 almost of the state budget. While the total of health, education, and infrastructure are 19%. So they use more on debt service than on health, and we have heard the enormous health issues in Niger Delta, and on education, and on infrastructure. So the struggle with the debt situation also is huge. And what we often see is countries are sort of locked into what we call like a fossil fuel lock-in, because they have to spend so much of the budget, so much money on debt servicing, that they are sort of forced to continue with like oil or other gas production in order to earn money so that they can pay off the debt. So it's almost impossible also for the state. I know that in Nigeria it's a huge issue between local government and the states and so on, but still it's a big problem for many, many countries with this high level of debt to actually transition, because you need so much money. I looked yesterday at that report from the IMF said that Nigeria would need 177 billion US dollar to meet their own promise to cut 50% emissions before 2030. 177 billion they have to get in order to transition.
So what you're really saying also is that the way the pension fund is investing, for example, in Shell in Nigeria, is also keeping them locked in or preventing them from a green transition.
Yes, they can. This contributes to having Shell using their really bad production, which hinder, and it lacks the opportunity for them to have a green transition and to have a responsible economy. So it is a big responsibility that Norway have and should use as well, because as Lars said, yes, we do have a responsibility because we have this ownership of 60 billion, but also that the pension fund sets such a standard for other funds as well and for other investments. So Norway doesn't only have the power of being one of the largest investors in Shell, but also that they have so much international sort of respect, being the most responsible fund that they claim to be, that it sets standards and procedures for other investors as well.
So this is also, I mean, all these large companies now, whether it's Shell or Equinor, or they are concerned, or at least should be concerned about their reputation. And I mean, we don't have Shell here today, so it's difficult, you know, to ask them any questions. But I mean, are they not? How have they stated in public their responsibility for this situation? I mean, they have at one point paid a huge compensation. I think it was $200 million in 2015. So that is also acknowledging a responsibility, or at least in a way. Is it possible that they would do something similar again, or was that a one-time?
It can be one time, particularly when we are saying that when you look the Bayelsa Environmental Commission report, if you also look the UNEP report and other independent reports, you will see that this is also the same debate that is going on at the climate change debate at the last COP meeting, COP27, talking about loss and damage fund, and over $100 billion was promised. Even just recently in Nairobi, when African government head of states came to hold the first African climate summit, the Nairobi Declaration, all the key issues also lay emphasis about climate finance, on how to finance climate solutions. And if you look, one of the major contributors to climate crisis is the exploration of oil and gas. Nigeria remains one of the leading countries in the world that is producing gas flaring. And you know, gas flaring contributes to those things that help hit the climate. And so if that is, and that this oil company has benefited, they also have responsibility to contribute to the fund. And so it's not going to be one-off thing. But unfortunately, within the national system, within the national country, within the country in Nigeria, the systems are failing. Democratic opportunity to hold our government accountable, to come out with rules and regulations that would have held this company accountable, is not working. There's a complicit. And then our friend, again, I've also brought the international dimension, the debt dimension. That also constrained the Nigerian government. They are compelled to continue to adopt a neoliberal economic paradigm. And what that emphasizes is that when you are a debtor, you're hardly able to implement economic policies that will give you that sovereignty. And once you lost that sovereignty, you are not able to hold those companies accountable. And that's where the situation we found ourselves. Do we now keep quiet and remain like that? No. And that's why these actions are taking place. And that's why we are engaging that countries like Norway that value their image, they have to be held accountable. And that's why we are saying that we're not going to be stopping here. It's not just asking the oil fund to visit. In our next AGM coming up next year, we're also going to be holding the People's Tribunal. And I think the Norwegian Oil Fund will also be one of those institutions that we'll be looking into. We have to hold them accountable. They have to contribute to solve the problem, the mess. It's not just pulling out. It's pulling out with responsibility to take care of what has happened, because you can't create a mess and run away from the mess. It's pulling out, sending a signal, like a comrade has just mentioned, but at the same time, the liability that they have left behind, they must take responsibility, because it's in the interest of the world. And because there is always action that emerges from whatever any decision you take today. The level of migration from Nigeria to Europe is huge. And the reason why people are migrating from Nigeria to Europe is not because they like Europe. I cannot stay in Holland. I cannot stay in Norway.
You don't like this weather?
I don't. You can see, I don't like it. We have our own peculiar environment. But for economic survival, you see young men and women living every day coming to Europe, because unemployment level in Nigeria is huge. The debt impact is undermining the health and the educational sector.
But I want to ask you,
Yes.
is there any, like, I don't know if you're aware, but you should be. Now, just now, there's a huge trial in Sweden against the Swedish oil company called Lundin Oil. They are now standing accused of war crimes in Sudan, where they extracted oil and earned a lot of money, who they actually have invested in the Norwegian oil sector now. The trial will last for 2 years. That's the plan. And I wanted to ask, what about Shell in Nigeria? Is any similar process going on?
That's why I said the situation in Nigeria is that when you talk about corruption, you always see one single story narrative, that the country is corrupt. But who corrupts the country? It is this multinational company. Shell have compromised the system.
Who are in
hands, in glove.
But you have a new government now. You had the election in February.
Yes, how did the government come into existence? You have to look that. Politics is polluted, is corrupted. And the question is that oil theft you hear every day finances the politics. And so when you emerge from that kind of system, will you be accountable to the people?
Camilla?
I just want to add a little bit to that. There's a term called the oil complex, which is used by the Professor Michael Watts, describing how government, military, local communities, and the state are intertwined. And I think we cannot overestimate how much the elites in the economy, in the politics, and in local communities are enmeshed in each other. And I think it's perfectly summed up as an extremely corrupt system, and that has nothing to do with a political party in government. It's the elite. We're talking about the bunkering, for instance. That's Shell point to. You see bunkering. There's vessels. It's not small people going around with their jerry cans, because they exist too. But it's massive vessels in your face, And Shell knows this, and Shell is implicit in it. And so I think that's that's rightfully, the system is so corrupt that even if there had been a court case, what about implementation? So what is happening is that environmental organizations in particular, with human rights organizations, take this abroad because of reputation, but also to test court cases. And Shell is being held responsible, because you asked about how there are very direct cases where they were committed in high court in Holland. I mean, that should be pretty obvious. But there are also settlement cases where they have explicitly said, we do not take responsibility. And there was a case in the US where families of the Ogoni 9 went to court for compensation, saying that Shell was implicit in killing 9 activists in Ogoniland. Shell settled the case and paid up $16 million, saying, we are not responsible, but feel sorry for. So there's a lot of, I mean, what does that really mean? We have the Bodo case in the UK court. There are several court cases going on in small
But it doesn't
communities.
really change anything.
No, but so that's the thing. They settle, pay out money, which is...
And continue.
And continue.
Exactly. So we have 5 minutes left. Let's try to...
Can I add one thing which I think is very important?
Okay.
Shell, you used the term divide and rule. Shell has actively used that. We've already talked, there are Ijos, there are Ogoni, there are different ethnic groups, there are different communities. And Shell uses that actively through their systems of even CSR with community responsibility systems, where they engage with local chiefs to settle them. There are a lot of corrupt chiefs around. I've been visiting communities where there are internal conflicts and where the youth have thrown out their leaders, etc., etc. And these youth, in practice, are hiring staff, community contractors that are supposed to do security service and other things. I've talked to a former community liaison officer from Shell saying that in terms of labor and strike, because these guys are often called upon to shut down strikes from workers who are demanding their salaries that may have not been paid for a long time. So this also adds up to how they navigate the local landscape, which is, it's not pretty.
And they create local conflict.
Yes, openly.
I have to stop you now because...
And I have to say 2 things. Because they do break...
Very quickly.
trade union rights and labor rights as well, not only environmental rights. They break human rights, not only environmental rights. And the Niger Delta is also suffering badly for climate change and flooding. So I think there's also the case of opening up the case. If the bank goes down and investigate, they should add trade union rights and climate change impact.
Now I'm stopping you. So let's use the now 3 minutes we have left to, but it's good, thank you, to try to look ahead. Lars Haltbrekken, what do you think we should do?
We, who are we?
Norway, we own the pension fund.
Okay.
You are our elected politician.
Yes.
David
because
and his colleagues are here.
There are different things that we should do within the roles that we have. As a elected member of the parliament, I could work for better, stricter rules for the pension fund. Okay.
Interesting.
And the organizations should continue to push both Shell and the pension fund and the Norwegian government towards divesting from Shell, that the pension fund divests. And Shell should go and visit Nigeria. And not Shell, sorry, the oil fund. Yes, of course. Yeah.
Looking ahead, are you here optimistic or pessimistic? And tomorrow you will meet the Council of Ethics.
Yes, we're very optimistic, and like I said to my colleague, it's not.
The mic.
I'm very optimistic. Like I said to my colleague, it's not what we will hear from the Ethics Committee or MBEM, but it is about the fact that we're speaking to the Norwegians. We're speaking to our friends, and that optimism is built on the hope that as a child of God, we're very hopeful. When David and Goliath started the struggle, David never looked what Goliath is, but he was very prophetic in his head, and he achieved his goal. That same momentum is what reinforces our message, and that is not what will come out of tomorrow, but is our future that we're talking about. So every day we face this struggle, every challenges we face, we are more encouraged. Like the snow yesterday encouraged us. And that same optimism is what we look forward to.
Should there be oil production in Nigeria at all?
We want the oil to be left on the ground because it does not benefit our people.
So the last word for you, Julia.
Yeah.
Looking ahead.
Looking ahead. I think, first of all, the Council of Ethics need more resources and also more, they need to be able to make decisions as well. Because now they come with advice, and then it's the oil fund and NBIM who sort of decides what to do if they want to disinvest. And for now, as the oil fund is like an index fund, they only have 5% normally for active engagement and for active where they can disinvest and so on. And when you have investments like Shell that's quite big, that eats out a quite large portion of that 5%, which makes it harder to disinvest from big companies where you're already highly invested in than smaller ones. So to disinvest from Shell is not as popular or easy as other companies because you only have this 5% limit. But when the Council of Ethics come with their advice, it goes above that 5% sort of playground. So that to make more resources and more power to the Council of Ethics, I think is one important thing that we should do. And also you mentioned in your presentation the loss and damage fund that was agreed upon at COP last year. I think we also need to make that established for real at the COP now in December, and also to make sure that it's grant money for that fund so you don't create even more debt issues while clean up Ogoni or other resources that you need for loss and damage. And also to have that under a democratic organ where all countries and also local communities like Ogoniland or other local communities can apply for a grant themselves and not have to go through the state in it. So to have a good loss and damage fund, which is democratic and grant-based, is one key that we need to work for at COP, and also to have more resources for the Council of Ethics, I think. Yeah.
Very good. Okay. Then this give a hand to the panelists. We now have a few minutes for you to ask your own questions. So please raise your hands. I want to see a lot of hands. Don't be shy. Let's impress our guests, showing them we are not shy Norwegian people. The girls dressed in orange will give you the microphone. I see you already have one. Please state your name, and if you are part of an organization or a workplace, you can mention that as well if you think that it is important. So I see a blue shirt first.
Yes, my name is Anders. I work at Sopra Steria, and I think this is a perfect example why we need make an international crime of ecocide. If you know about this,
explain.
So ecocide is like massive destruction of ecosystems, very much like this. And it's an amendment to the Rome Treaty, which is what the International Criminal Court is governing in regards to like crimes against humanity and crimes of war and all of these things. And if we, and I think we'll need to have like jurisdiction in an international level, and also make it possible to do this. So this is a movement. It hasn't been raised in the Norwegian Parliament, as far as I know, and I think that would be a good thing. And just having like the ability to prosecute people for ecocide would be a very beneficial thing. So I wonder what you think about that.
Lars, what do you think about ecocide? Would you raise the question in the Parliament?
Well, we definitely would raise the question about the destruction of nature that we see ongoing every day, and try to get better regulations. And next year, in the spring, we will also have a white paper from the government on how Norway will follow up on the on the nature treaty from Montreal a couple of years ago, and there we might raise the question.
Next question. I saw a hand. So please take the mic when over to, I think there are 2 questions in the back. You can fight for it. Okay.
Hi, my name is Diego Foss. I work as an advisor on economic justice with Save the Children Norway. But like Julia, I also have 2 hats because I've also written a master's thesis on the government pension fund and how it can become a more responsible investor. I have 2 questions. One is for Lars and the other is for the rest of the panel, starting with the one for Lars. Building on what Julia said in her final comment, I think she shows a structural issue with the fund where you have parts of the fund where the fund can quite easily itself just divest and there's no need for sort of a background. They just say, we don't think this is financially viable for ethical reasons, we're selling out. But then you have the big companies like Shell and others where it's just 60 billion kroners is quite a lot of money to just place somewhere else. So the fund becomes very hesitant to do that, but the Council of Ethics, on the other hand, has to take often a year or more than a year to do research and really go into and find an ongoing specific case and from there prove that there are violations of the ethical guidelines. So the question is, do you agree with the suggestion that the Council of Ethics can get the power themselves to exclude companies from the portfolio and the investment universe, rather than give advice to Norges Bank, which is the case today? And the second question is, because you said that you think divesting is the most powerful thing, but isn't it perhaps even more powerful to make the statement that this is so unethical that even if we can make money out of it, and we do, it is just ethically wrong for us to be invested? So is exclusion perhaps even more powerful than divestment? And then the question for everyone, I think probably all of us agree that after 10 years, we haven't accomplished what we want with Shell. It is natural to divest or exclude. But the question then remains, that means that the fund no longer has any tools to sort of engage with the company. So what other pathways do we then have for Shell to be held accountable and be brought to justice when the fund is no longer there? And are there things that the fund themselves can do when they have excluded or divested from the company? Thank you.
So first question to Lars.
If exclusion is stronger than divestment, well, if you divest without saying why, exclusion is stronger. But if you divest and tell that this is a divestment because of that Shell does not meet our ethical standards, that will be the same. So it should be followed by a very strong message as well. If the Ethical Advisory Board should have the right to decide whether the pension fund should divest or not, I'm not sure if I think that. That is something we will have to discuss a bit more. I'm afraid the answer is, yeah.
And then there was the question to everyone. Can you please repeat, or do you already remember? Yes, you remember. Okay, David first.
I think the Norwegian oil fund has a lot to learn from the Church of England. The Church of England was engaged in Shell until they ran into this challenge and realized, and it would be good if some of you can actually Google why Church of England pulled out of Shell. It's also this frustration, because otherwise the Norwegian fund will be complicit in the ecocide. And that's what my friend refers to. You're tapping a blood money. You can't be profiting from the blood of people. And I think we're speaking to the conscience of the Norwegians, that Norwegian fund cannot continue to be profiting from the blood of people. People are dying. Things are going wrong. And you cannot put priority to profit over the health of people. And I think that's what the Church of England have seen, and that's why they pulled out. We must send a signal. And that's the kind of word that we talk about. We have to be prophetic about this. And we have to be very strong about our message. Justice is justice. So for us, the options are very clear. Do we want to go through another 10 years again? After 10 years, we have seen that Shell is not willing. And we have almost seen the complicity of the oil fund through the responsible report, the responsible investment report. That's complicity. Because, and that's the implication of the state capture we're talking about. You can either be white or black. It's either you stand on the side of truth or on the side of lie. Where will the oil fund stand? Our debate, our demands are clear. We want the oil fund to stand on the side of truth. And truth is very clear, it's constant. Thank you.
Julia?
Well, of course, I agree. Norway should, first of all, you have the power to exclude or divest, but also, of course, the importance of the pension fund as this setting the standard internationally. I think that is a huge point, both, of course, for the real effects that can have for other companies, other pension funds, other investors as well. We like to see the pension fund as the best, the most ethical, the best in so many ways. And they do have some good standards for like state obligations and so on. They do have some good ethical guidelines. But when you also then have these situations where you also invest in Shell at the same times, the moral dilemma, the complexity of it makes it even bigger and greater. And to showcase that, okay, now it's too bad. We have given Shell 10 years. We have given them time. They tell us that it's going good, but the people on the ground say we cannot trust them. We see that the court cases in other countries show how bad the situation is. Then we have to pull out. Then we need to show strength when it actually doesn't happen. And to use that in a political sense as well, and to use that on the international stage to get the attention on the problem and to show other countries and other investments that they shouldn't be invested either. I think that could have a signal effect as well. And also for Norway's own reputation, because now internationally, countries are seeing how Norway are profiting on oil, on their own oil production. And also then you use the oil fund that we have earned from our own oil, investing in other companies that are destroying the nature and human life for oil company and oil production in other countries, other places in the world as well. And we don't contribute as much as we should on global climate finance. We have so many different dilemmas on top of each other. So
it's not part of our normal image.
No, it's not. We need to take action on it.
Camilla?
I'll try to be brief this time. I think it's important to keep track of what's what here. And I think the idea of sending a delegation for a fact-finding mission before concluding is important. And I think the question of responsibility before divesting is absolutely crucial. I think what we see in the Niger Delta already is that there's a tendency to divest without cleaning up. That may be the worst case scenario here. So I think there's thinking about that when engaging with the bank and how to do that is, yeah, just...
That was it?
That was it.
Wow. Okay, but that's perfect because now, look, it's 10 o'clock. So that was really good, Camilla.
Thank
so
you.
a big hand to all the panelists. Thank you so much, and good luck to ANEEJ tomorrow, visiting the, is it the Council of Ethics or the Council of Ethics you will have a meeting with?
The Council of Ethics today and the MBIM
tomorrow. Okay. So the best of luck to you, and thank you all for spending this morning with us. Please help yourself with food and coffee. Oh, I think there's nothing left. That's good. No food waste. That's very good for the organizers. Thank you, and I hope you enjoyed and learned something new. Picture? Okay, so if you can come up on the stage, I think someone wants a picture of you. All together, or? Yes. Yeah. Okay.